What would you do if you were tricked into a deal, only for the other party to immediately go back on their word and leave you with a massive bill and a list of demands? In today's story, the protagonist was backed into just such a corner by his arrogant HOA president. But his response is a masterclass in how to turn the tables using your opponent's own ego against them. It all began a long time ago, on a piece of land that was once part of a huge farm. I bought my plot about 30 years ago. Well, after the farm was broken up, but long before the area saw any real development. My property was near a back entrance that connected to a simple dirt road. The pricier plots, naturally, were situated near the main tarred road at the front. My initial plan was to get into a bit of farming myself. But life had other plans. And that dream never took root. About a decade after I bought the land, some of the more proactive property owners, let's call them the organized owners, got together and successfully petitioned to have our area designated as an official municipal suburb. With this new status came a promise from the municipality: they would install tarred roads, water, and electricity, but only if a certain percentage of the properties were developed. Seizing the opportunity, a construction company with ties to the organized owners began approaching landowners like me. They offered to build houses at an incredibly reasonable price, provided they could get a minimum number of us to sign up. Around the same time, one of the leading organized owners, a man we'll call Mr. Davison, approached me with an offer to buy half of my property. The price he offered was about 4 times what I had paid for the entire piece of land 10 years earlier. I agreed. That sale, combined with a small bank loan, gave me enough to have a large, beautiful house built on my remaining half. I lived there happily for a few years, and my mother even moved in with me. My next project was to subdivide my property again to build a smaller house for her right next to mine. Tragically, an undiagnosed tumor took her from us before we could even break ground. Soon after she passed, the house felt too empty. I decided to move out and rent the property instead. Just a few weeks before I left, Mr. Davison started floating the idea of an official homeowners association. I wasn't interested in the slightest and moved away shortly after. 2 years passed. By then, our little suburb had 2 entrances, the original one off a busy main road, and my old dirt road back entrance, which was now a proper tarred road leading from a quieter municipal street. Mr. Davison contacted me again. The newly formed HOA wanted to block off the original main road to improve security and cut down on through traffic. This would make the road next to my property the main and only entrance to the entire community. To do this, they were pressuring me to finally join the HOA. I refused. I was adamant, and they eventually dropped it. However, they came back with a different proposal. They wanted to place a large sign welcoming people to the neighborhood and build a small guard hut for a 24/7 security detail. The only practical spot for both was on the edge of my land. We negotiated an easement agreement. In exchange for the use of a small corner of my land, the HOA would take over mowing my entire lawn and pay me the equivalent of about $35 a month. It was a fantastic deal for me. The property was large, and since they already had a full-time gardening service, it cost them virtually nothing. I was getting my lawn mowed and enough cash for a family takeaway night each month, while they provided a security guard who was, for all intents and purposes, stationed right at my property's edge. For over a decade, this arrangement worked perfectly. My property has been rented to the same wonderful tenant the entire time, and life was quiet. that is. Until about 3 years ago. Things took a dark turn when someone began terrorizing my tenant's young daughter, making strange noises and firing a gun near her bedroom window on several occasions. It's a chilling thought. But as one commenter on my story later pointed out, it wouldn't be surprising if the HOA president himself was the one firing that gun to scare my tenants. The incidents terrified my tenant. And frankly, it scared the HOA too. Suddenly, they came to me with a new, urgent proposal. If I finally agreed to join the HOA, they would grant me permanent exemptions from all HOA rules and fees. In addition, they would fund and build a security wall around the entire neighborhood, complete with electric fencing and cameras, a project they'd wanted for years but couldn't do while my property remained outside the association. I saw no downside, so I agreed. This revealed Mr. Davison's greatest fatal flaw, his arrogance. He believed he had won, completely unaware that his short-sighted victory had just armed the very man he sought to control. The wall went up surprisingly fast, taking just over a year. Then, exactly 1 month to the day after the last brick was laid, the dishonesty began. My tenant received an HOA warning for his dog's barking. When he informed them that the property was exempt from the rules, they told him the exemptions had been cancelled and gave him 30 days to comply. He immediately called me. I started opening the pile of mail from the HOA that I had been ignoring, assuming it was just junk. I could not believe what I was reading. They had retroactively cancelled all my exemptions. Their list of demands was staggering. They wanted late fees going back over a year. They claimed the easement for the guard hut was now void because the HOA contract allowed them to use small and used portions of members' land for free. And they had cancelled it retroactively for a year. They demanded I refund the $35 a month payments from that period. They were billing me for the gardening service. And they were going to fine me for every single infraction my tenant didn't fix. An expensive legal battle followed, which ended with the judge telling me that, for the most part, what the HOA did was legal. They had the right to revoke my exemptions, but they were required to give me 30 days' notice. As I walked to my car, defeated, Mr. Davison swaggered over. He told me I was stupid for not joining the HOA at the very beginning when I could have been a founder member. Then he added, with a smirk, "Next time, be sure to understand the documents you sign before signing them." He was right. I should have read the contract more carefully. So, when I got home, I grabbed the thick pile of HOA documents and started reading. I was determined to find any loophole I could exploit. I didn't even have to get past the first page. You see, for all practical purposes, a property is known by its street address. But on any legal document, it must be identified by its unique property number from the city records. And I remembered something crucial. Years ago, when my mother was going to move in, I had legally subdivided my property to carve out a small plot for her house that was never built. The original easement agreement for the guard hut and the sign was for that tiny, empty plot of land. When the HOA drew up the new contract for me to join, they had lazily just copied the property number from that old easement agreement. They hadn't signed up my main property with the house and my tenants at all. They had signed up a small, empty, undeveloped lot. The very next afternoon, Mr. Davison drove an hour to my home just to maliciously hand-deliver 2 documents. One was a formal notice that my exemptions would expire in 30 days. And the other stated that the easement agreement would be terminated in 30 days. He clearly wanted to rub it in my face. Exactly 30 days later. To the hour. It was my turn. I knocked on Mr. Davison's door. He was the HOA president. After all, and had him sign for 2 documents of my own. The first was a formal notice of my intent to build a house on my HOA-registered property, which visibly confused him. The second was a notice that the HOA had 30 days to remove the guard shed, the boom gate, the sign, and any other equipment from my land. He tried to argue, but I just turned, got in my car, and drove away without a word. The next morning, the HOA's lawyer called, his voice dripping with condescension. He informed me that their junk would be staying right where it was, as it was on an unused portion of my land. I calmly explained that I was building a house there, so the land would no longer be unused. I could almost hear his smirk over the phone as he told me the courts wouldn't look kindly on me building a second house just to be spiteful. I let him enjoy his moment before replying, my own smirk now evident. I think you'll find the property in question doesn't have a house on it. In fact, it's barely large enough for one small house, let alone any other buildings. I then told him to look up the actual property number in the city records and call me back. It took them 5 days. Their lawyer called back, his tone entirely different. He tried to argue that the original easement couldn't be cancelled without their permission. I simply emailed him a photo of the termination notice they themselves had sent me. The panicked calls started coming in. Mr. Davison invited me to lunch. I said no. Other members of the original group tried to talk. Some aggressive, some sympathetic. I said no to all of them. With just 9 days left on the clock, I got a call from a new lawyer. He said he wanted to negotiate a surrender, his exact words. I had my own lawyer draft a new easement offer, and I met him the next day. The new contract was a work of art. It cost them $500 a month instead of $35, with an automatic increase for inflation. It changed mow the lawn to maintain the property to full HOA standards. It included a $7,500 cancellation fee, payable by them for any reason. And here was the masterstroke: the contract would automatically terminate, with the fee due, if the HOA took any disciplinary action, levied any complaints, or if any legal action was taken against the property or my tenant. The HOA would also have to pay all my legal fees if they sued me. To top it off, all disputes had to be mediated, at their expense, by the very paralegal who had called me to surrender. Mr. Davison made a foolish decision at that moment, completely unaware that this single signature would lead to his own downfall and the complete loss of his power. The new lawyer looked sick. He said it was unfair, but he'd show it to the president. I reminded him that in 8 days, I'd be hiring men with sledgehammers. That evening, Mr. Davison called me, absolutely livid. I'm never going to sign this, he screamed. Okay, I said calmly. He raged about the price, about how I was forcing his hand. I simply told him he was free not to sign it. He hung up, shouting that I'd be hearing from his lawyer. The next morning, the surrender lawyer, who, it turns out, was actually a paralegal named Leo, called and asked me to come in and sign the contract. When I arrived, Leo handed me the documents. He chuckled when I said I needed to read them first to check for changes. I read every word. Nothing was changed. Not a single thing. And at the bottom was Mr. Davison's signature. Witnessed by Leo himself. I looked at Leo in genuine disbelief. Why did he sign this? It was stupid to sign it. Leo just looked at me and said. I started to tell him it was a bad decision. But he told me I wasn't being paid to think or give legal advice. And to shut up. So I shut up. Leo admitted that the president planned to sign it to secure the easement and then sue me later. It took the HOA 6 months to realize just how completely trapped they were. Their own lawyers told them they had no chance in court. The only part they absolutely could not live with was the clause making them pay my legal fees if anyone sued me. I eventually agreed to an addendum. The HOA would pay if they sued me. And Mr. Davison would personally be responsible for my legal fees from any other party. Unless he held no position at all on the HOA board. He resigned at the end of that meeting. As he left, I looked him in the eye and politely told him, in front of everyone, that he should not sign documents unless he understands what he's signing. They underestimated me. They won't do that again. Because they can't. It turned out that without the security boom on my property, the HOA would be in breach of its own articles and would dissolve. All their security cameras were wired into the guard shed on my land. It was my way or the highway. The new power dynamic was cemented at our most recent mediation. I had, for fun, built a paddling pool for neighborhood dogs at the entrance. I made it myself. And it looked, well, terrible. The HOA called a mediation and nicely explained that the pool was an eyesore. I asked them to provide a detailed list of everything needed to bring it up to their standards. At the next meeting, they handed me an extensive list that essentially required a complete professional rebuild. I thanked them, pulled out a highlighted copy of our agreement where they agreed to get the property to HOA standards, and handed it to them along with their own list. I then mentioned that the HOA usually preferred these things handled within 30 days. This moment solidified the new reality. The power dynamics had not just shifted. They had been completely inverted. The hunter had become the prey. And the prey now set all the traps. The epilogue to this story is just as satisfying. I learned that Mr. Davison sold his house and is apparently leaving the country. The HOA successfully sued him for a massive amount of money lost due to his personal vendetta against me. It seems his ego wrote a check his wallet couldn't cash. The core lesson here is simple: always read what you sign. And never underestimate a person you've wronged. Because their revenge might be written in the fine print. They might just build a terrible-looking pool and make you pay to fix it. So, what would you have done in my situation? And at what point do you think Mr. Davison truly sealed his own fate? Let me know in the comments below.